welcome from a windy winter's day in the north of England. What I want to talk to you about today is something that affects many of us. I certainly know it affects me, which is I can find myself getting into a situation when things happen in my life and they can trigger really powerful negative emotions which can leave me powerless. And this is something that's blighted my life on and off ever since I can remember. And very recently I've received an email from a very good friend of mine who is one of my former clients, and she had a USR and she ended up having every single member of her family, even her grandmother, having a USR, so pleased was she by the results of that. And she sent me this information, and it comes from a guy called Neale Donald Walsch, who many of you will know because he wrote a series of books, and the first one was called Conversations with God. And I was actually given that book and didn't get on particularly well with it, to be quite honest. And I could tell there was something there, even if it wasn't really doing it for me. So this is an exercise that he has created, and funnily enough it actually taps in and is very similar to something I did myself, which comes from a completely different source a long time ago. And what I would say is I'd say that his method is even better. So it's a reminder of something, but also an improvement. And it's called a 5-minute exercise to change your perception of reality, of past events. But as you're going to go on to see, it isn't just for past events, it actually can be used for events in the present and even concerns about the future too. So this is the way that you do it. You definitely want to start with a past event. That's the most powerful way to make this work for yourself. So you think of a situation in the past where you had a lot of negative emotions arise. So it's really easy for me. It happened last night. A good friend of mine got really pissed off and angry and put the phone down on me and left me with a lot of feelings, a lot of heavy negative emotions churning in my gut. And I thought, I feel absolutely wonderful, feeling very full of sarcasm as I was saying those words to myself. Absolutely great, wonderful evening, really laying on the sarcasm with a trowel. And I remembered that I'd been given this email more than 2 weeks previously, and I noticed a great resistance to doing the exercise. And this is what I find: if there's a big resistance to doing something, that's usually because there's some goal there that I don't want to mind. So I thought, come on then, now you feel desperately miserable enough, let's do something about it. So I did the exercises exactly as he prescribes. And so the first thing you do is you go back to the past event, and you have in your hand a pen and on your lap a paper or a notebook. And what you do is you go back to the past event and you write down exactly what happened. So what happened is I said this and he said that and I said this and he said that. I wrote down the details, and then he put the phone down on me. And then you carry on writing, and the next bit that I wrote out is exactly what the feelings were that I had. And I felt betrayed, I felt rejected, I felt abandoned. The person threatened to cut off all contact with me for 6 months. And it was a fairly heavy melodramatic end to a phone call, shall we say. And so I really searched into me to what all these emotions were, and I wrote them all out in detail: the betrayal, the rejection, whatever else it was, got it all out there on the piece of paper. And then my rational mind started to balk and get a bit freaked out because I knew the next step. Well, my rational mind was convinced the next step was going to be the difficult bit, because what I was asked to do next is to go back to that past event and imagine what feelings I would like to choose to have instead. Because basically something happened, a shed load of negative emotions arose in me, and here I am doing the exercise, and it's my chance to choose what emotions I could possibly have instead. Bearing in mind that I'm aware that feeling abandoned, rejected, betrayed and all the rest of it feels really pretty awful, so let's go for something better. And the rational mind said, well, you're not going to imagine it was all playful puppy dogs and cheerful high spirits, are you? No way, are you? So, okay, yeah, rational mind, quite right. So I literally imagined myself in that past situation. And to my great surprise, a different feeling arose straight away. And the feeling that arose was compassion. Because now that I was able to look at the event from a distance, I was not immersed in it, it put me in the position, rather than being wrapped up in myself and my own feelings, which is clearly where I was in the phone call, And for some little time afterwards, I was able to shift out of that into actually having an awareness about the other person. And so that's what I did. I went into compassion for this person who was actually saying these things to me on the phone. And I discovered that was my key. As soon as I was able to get into compassion for how terrible he was feeling, then that enabled me to get into other emotional states. And I was able to start to appreciate the fact that there was some learning in the situation. Then I even started to develop a sense of gratitude for the fact that I could see this is something that could actually be shared with other people for people's benefit. So let's get back to the script, because there I am. I've actually managed to create the compassion. This is my first step. So still with a pen and a notepad, I continue to write out what's happening for me. So I write out being in that past event, imagining myself there, like I'm doing this Shamanic journey, I'm there, and the compassion arises when it continues into the appreciation and the gratitude and all the rest of it. And when I finish doing that, then the next bit of the exercise, it says, pretend that's how you feel. Now, this is a really interesting key bit which I discovered, which is going a little bit above and beyond his exercise, because I was actually able to fully imagine myself in that past event. I didn't need to pretend because I'd actually done it. So if you are a person that would find it difficult to really be in that past event, and that's what the final stage would be. You simply pretend that that's how things are now. And so what I found is within the space of a few minutes, those heavy emotions which were literally sitting in my gut like a belly full of lead, they just melted away. And I kept on with the compassion. I found the compassion was the most useful thing to have, because in any situation that you have with a past event where you've got a load of heavy emotions, it's usually to do with some other people. And part of the problem I could see with hindsight was that I was actually being far too much in myself and not enough in the experience of that other person. So the compassion for me was the golden key, and that enabled me to make the leap out of my own little selfish world into the fact that someone else was having a really hard time, which is why they were putting the phone down on me and threatening not to speak to me for 6 months. It all made perfect sense. So I really do commend this exercise to you as something of great value. And if that was it, that would be amazing. But no, there's the extra bit which I want to add. This also works for anything that's going on for you in the present. And even more important, this can also work for you for a situation that you might possibly imagine for yourself in the future. So you could have a situation where you might be, say, worried about paying a bill or whatever it might be. And you could apply exactly the same principles of the exercise to that issue. Because what you, first of all, you write down, okay, here I am in the present, worried about paying that bill, and it leaves me with this feeling and this feeling and this feeling. So what happened is I got this bill through the door, and I know I've got to pay it by such a date. I'd write out all the details about the facts of the case, and I'd write about how I feel about it, and then I would project myself forward into the future, and I'd still be having those same negative feelings, and I would invite myself to choose some new feelings about that situation. And I would look for something, and I don't know what it is because I've not done that, but when I do that, I would discover, even though my rational mind might have concerns about it, what other things there could be. And I would then write those down, and I would then use what I'm going to give you a terminological basis for. It's in neurolinguistic programming, they call it the as-if frame. So this is known in other traditions as well. So in other words, you behave or you feel or you act as if. So you create the new emotions and you act as if that's the case. So in the case of the bill, it could be the emotion I now have is relief and satisfaction that the money to pay the bill arrived through some unexpected means. That would do you, and you would key into that emotion, and you would then, every time you thought about that future bill, you would be working from the as-if frame, which is the new situation, which is basically pretending yourself into a new future. So then this gives me an opportunity to come up with a phrase, fake it to make it. You must have heard this because I've heard it, and I can't remember the source, so I can't give you credit to whoever came up with this one, but it's a great one. It's a well-known psychological technique that actually, if you act as if something is different, then that starts to change how you feel, and by changing how you feel, that actually transforms the whole experience. So I thoroughly commend this process to you. And there is also another bigger title which he uses to describe, but it's called a process to eliminate suffering. Now, I wouldn't have wanted to use that right at the beginning of this film because that sounds a bit grandiose, but can you see now that any situation, let's work with the past first because that's the easiest, any situation where you've got any negative emotions you're carrying around, you can actually treat it through this very simple 3-stage process. So, pen and paper. So you go back into the past and you write what happened and you write the feelings associated with it, all the negative ones. Then you go back and you revisit that past circumstance, choosing the emotions you'd like to have instead. And personally, I think compassion is a really good one to start with, because if it's something to do with somebody else, if you can develop even one iota of compassion for their situation, it's the doorway that leads you into some new feelings and a completely new set, which in my case led to appreciation, gratitude, and all the rest of it. Then you write those out as well. And then in my case, I discovered by being able to totally relive that experience, I didn't even need to do step 3, which was to pretend that things are now with the use of emotions. So I can thoroughly commend it to you, because I just felt so much better having done that process. And I know now, whenever I find a situation where something happens that triggers negative emotions, I've got a tool to deal with it. So a big thank you to Neale Donald Walsch for that one. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.